Hello and welcome to the Third Sector. I'm your host, Tamara Brinkman. In our society, there are three sectors: the public, the private, and the nonprofit, and it's that third sector that we're here to talk about today. Joining me for today's episode is Roxie Deer from Richmond Neighborhood Restoration. Welcome back to the Third Sector.
Thanks for having me back. We were just talking that I came, I think, probably in the first month or two, and now it's been 2 years, and things have changed a lot.
Yes, and so that is why you are back. We are, I'm very excited to hear all kinds of exciting news about what's going on with Richmond Neighborhood Restoration, because I know you are busy with lots of great projects that are going to be a huge benefit to our community. So before we dive into the new projects, for those who may not know, give a little bit of that, history of R&R.
Yeah, so Richmond Neighborhood Restoration, or R&R as we're more commonly known as, has been around for a decade. We actually turned 10 this year. So
Wow.
January is our 10-year anniversary. It seems unbelievable that we're still a new nonprofit, which is to think about in our community, an organization that's been around for 10 years. It really takes about 10 years to get an organization off the ground and running at full capacity. So the goal was, we started with 4 men. They were just friends, buddies, and they're sitting around one night and they said, we should buy that old home and restore it. And it was a doctor in town, Dr. Dave Jetmore, Chad Stegner with Stegner Restoration, J.P. Hall at the time was with Indiana Landmarks, and Sean Dingworth, who we all know from Richmond Art Museum. And so 4 guys who really had nothing else in common but a passion for old homes. Okay. And they figured out, the 4 of them, they brought their friends in and they just started learning how to restore homes. And they did the first one and they thought, okay, we're done with that. And the community picked up on it, and they made a profit with the first home, enough to buy another home and start that one. And the rest has kind of been history. We have completed 5 homes. We're in process of completing our 6th residential home. And but along the way, we've also grown to start taking on commercial spaces in our downtown area. And we stick to historic homes. Usually 100 years or older, and we're going to talk about some of those specific projects, but the goal is that we take a home that has been empty, has not been on the property tax rolls for a while, and we restore it. We put money and resources into that home, and then we put it on the market and sell it and bring a new family to it that's has a high earning salary, that is invested in their community. And they invest, they come here, they put their kids in our school systems.
Right.
They join our nonprofit boards, they attend our events in the community, and it's just going to bring life back to a town that we all already love, but we want to make sure that it's a place people want to live.
Right.
And that's the heart of our organization.
Right. And if anyone has looked for a home in Wayne County, and if you aren't already aware, I think our vacancy rate is about, 1%?
Yes, I talked to a realtor just a few weeks ago, and there's, in Wayne County, just 150 homes that are available to purchase, and that's not a lot of homes for how many people need to buy homes in our community.
Right.
We hear from our biggest employers all the time that a lot of their employees work in Richmond but live elsewhere because they can't find homes here that are safe, that are beautiful. They want to live in beautiful homes. You want to live in a home you're proud of. And not everyone has the skill set or the resources to invest in a home and fix it up to the... We hear about flipping homes frequently. R&R is not a flipping group. We don't flip homes. We are doing high-level work.
Right.
We're bringing elements of the historic home through in the restoration.
Right. Yeah, I think it's a staggering statistic of the number of people that work here but commute here.
Yeah, like 40% or something of our workforce. Yeah.
It's up in that. It's in that number, and it's really quite staggering. And unfortunately, that doesn't help you with growth. And it's the chicken and the egg, right? So you guys are helping to solve the chicken and the egg problem just a little bit.
One project at a time.
One project at a time.
And it's interesting because obviously COVID, we know the ramifications of COVID on the construction industry. We were all trying to redo our decks in our homes during COVID. I remember my own self. I was like, oh, I'm going to paint my deck and I'm going to do all these things. And construction costs soared. Well, our organization felt that. And it's taken us a few years to come back from that. But the way we came back has been stronger. I mean, we have the best partners and supporters in the community. I have the best board of directors that have really just steered this organization strategically, but also in a way that garners a lot of attention from the community. And there's so much excitement around what we're doing right now that, I mean, I can't step out in public without people going, have you talked about this house yet? What about this building? And we just get really excited with those conversations.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of really neat architects, and there's a lot of homes and buildings in this community. I'm not from here, but that have huge history, and you can tell at one time were real gems and have just lost their luster over the years with lack of care or, you know, just not having anybody pay any attention to them, and that level of neglect over time, you know, what are you going to do? It just, they fall down, and then nobody wants to touch them because it's hard and costly.
It's difficult to restore a home. We have a house on North 12th Street right now called the Doolin home, which I had driven by this home every day for years and just thought, that's a beautiful home. I wonder if anyone lives there. And I think it was like maybe the first or second week of me working at R&R, someone said, you need to go see that home because it will tell you why you're doing this. And I thought, okay, whatever. Everybody says that about every home in this town. I walked in and there's this mahogany staircase that spirals around the house.
Wow.
And it's all built in one piece. And I couldn't even figure out how they built it. Like, you can't even see like screws or anything like that.
Wow.
Turns out it was built in Chicago. The owner, Mr. Doolin, was a lumber merchant, so he paid for the best woodwork and had the staircase built by a guy in Chicago and then shipped down here to the depot building, and they pulled it into the 12th Street. And the staircase is beautiful. And I walked in that house and it took my breath away.
Yeah.
And that house has been sitting empty for 15 years.
Wow.
And we now get to restore it and put a new family in it. And the baseboards are 18 inches tall, mahogany wood. I mean, these are things that people romanticize and think about in their lives, that they would love to live in a home like that. And it's right here in the heart of our downtown.
Wow, and quite frankly, wouldn't be something you could afford to do unless you had like a lot. We're talking like millions and millions of, you know, you'd have to have real depth of pocket to be able to build something from the beginning, scratch today, right? I mean,
and you wouldn't even be able to put in mahogany now because they just don't make it in that quantity. So these are interesting things to know about art. Like, it's such a unique resource that we have. And other communities, I traveled to Bloomington recently. There's a group similar to R&R down there, but their oldest home is 50 years old because they've torn down so many of their historic homes for new growth and development. And we're so lucky that we haven't done that yet, and we have this opportunity to save them.
Well, that's pretty exciting. So tell us the process of what it's like for you guys to acquire a property and then sort of from end to end, from acquisition to putting it on the market to sell. It's
a long process. We start by figuring out what properties are even available. We have areas that we're very interested in. The more visible, the better. We love our projects to be something the community drives by. One, because it creates hope and excitement. You've driven down the streets and you go, oh, why hasn't that house been cleaned up? Well, if you see a sign out there, you see people working, you go, oh, there's something happening. Somebody cares about it. And so visible house is really important to us. We have a checklist of things that we look for, kind of a rubric to score projects on. I have an incredible group of contractors who, before we even make an offer on a home, they've already pulled quotes together for me. They've started to think about design elements, what can be saved, what can't be saved. Once we purchase or the property is given to us, sometimes there's no value to the property, so it's just handed over to us, which means it's either about to be torn down or so unsafe that we can't even put people in it until we have professionals go in. once we've done that, then we have kind of a timeline, and everything goes into an Excel spreadsheet, right? And it sounds crazy
Critical
to think
path.
about, but then I think this is when the Chip and Joanna Gaines of it all starts. You know, we have people tearing down walls,
Right.
and we have contractors putting in plumbing and heating, and my design team comes in and they're picking out the colors, and we have volunteers who come in and spend the days just doing the nitty gritty, nasty work, and then usually we try to do a home in about a year and a half. That's about the time it takes. Obviously, these old homes, every time you tear into something or you pull a floorboard up, you find something.
Right.
And so we plan for the worst and hope for the best. That's always, we budget for the worst case scenario in every situation. And then once it's done, we love to have an open house that the public can attend. We usually do 2 or 3 of those for each house, where we'll get 300 to 400 people sometimes that come through the homes.
Wow.
And some, come for the big grand reveal. Some come for the more public appeal. But it's fun. I think it creates, they're like, oh, I could do some of this work myself. And,
interesting.
our volunteers, we train them, so they get really excited about the work, and then they go home and do some of the work on their own homes. But then once we're done with the open house, we put it on the market. It's fully staged. And then we work with local realtors. We work with companies across the state. There are people who will move for a historic home. And of our 5 sold homes, 4 have brought brand new families to Richmond.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
So there's some actual traction there with what we're doing. Yeah.
That's exciting. That's very exciting. So I'm curious, are the 4 gentlemen who were sort of your founding fathers, I don't know what
that's what we call them, actually.
Oh, okay, perfect.
The founding fathers. Yeah.
Well, there we go. Are they still equally involved today as they were when they got started?
So they all 4 are brand new, lifelong members of the board. So we made them Emeriti members.
Okay.
So they don't have voting power on our board, but they are all actively engaged in some form or fashion. JP is the director of historic preservation at Ball State University.
Okay.
And he serves as an incredible resource for us. If I call him and I say, I'm looking at this house, and I'll send him a picture of a floorboard and go, what does this I don't even know what kind of wood this is. How do I even save this? And he's got professionals all across the country that help us.
Wow.
Dave and Sean are much more boots on the ground for me. Dave is my project's go-to person. He walks in every potential project with me. He's a little bit more brave. He goes in basements and attics where I avoid those at first. And he'll go down there and do those. Sean's on our design team, so picking how the house will be staged, the colors, things like that. And Chad is a great resource for us because he is in construction and restoration efforts. So while he doesn't necessarily do the work, he's always kind of an advisor to me as this is what needs to be done. Here's expected costs, things like that.
Right. Okay.
So they're very involved. We actually have a fund set up in their name called the Founders Fund.
Okay.
Where people can donate in their honor.
Oh, all right.
Because they have put a lot of time into this organization.
Right. Well, so we're lucky to have them.
Yeah.
So tell us about the new and exciting projects that R&R is involved in.
Yeah, so outside of our restoration in residential homes, we've moved into a new element. I call it kind of our second pillar, which is our commercial buildings downtown. I'm sure most people are familiar with the Revitalize Richmond program through Earlham College, but if you're not, Earlham has been granted a $25 million grant through Eli Lilly Foundation. And that grant is set to be, it was meant to be for downtown development and a community. And so Earlham really pulled a lot of groups together about almost 2 years ago to figure out what our needs were. I mean, it's been a long time since we started on this project. And R&R came in as a partner with $5 million of that $25 million set aside for restoration efforts on these buildings.
Okay.
And we've just been an incredible partnership with Earlham, figuring out what buildings need to be done, how it needs to be done. We have acquired the Reedmore property, which most people are familiar with on the 900 block. That building has sat empty, we think, for about 20 years now.
Okay.
When we received it, there were no windows. The floorboards had been ripped up. It was just kind of in disrepair, and it sat at the heart of our downtown.
Right.
And we have invested quite a bit of money in it, and the windows are already in. We expect the interior to be done by April.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, it's a quick turnaround.
I noticed the windows because I was parked at that light not that long ago, and I was like, and you look up and you're like, those are new windows.
Finally, that was really
that
important.
That is very obvious.
Yeah, we didn't want any more snow or wind blowing in as we start to think of. So that was the first. We actually had the windows ordered the day we signed for the property. The windows were delivered, and it was almost like, it felt like, all the signs were aligning for us because they showed up that day, and I went, oh, it's perfect timing, and we were able to start immediately on the project, which in construction never happens,
right?
So that's been a big project for us downtown. Second and third floor will have living units. First floor will be white box for a future entrepreneur. And then the building will go into a program that exists to find entrepreneurs and renters, and it'll garner money back into the community through that program. So there's continuous investment after we're done with the project. We've also identified the U.S. Bank building, or the Second National Bank, that big behemoth of a building on Main Street. It was sitting empty. It was for sale. It went up for auction. And we really had to fight for that building. There were a lot of people from out of town and out of state, out of country that wanted it. And they didn't have plans for it. They just wanted to sit on a big property. And that doesn't help our downtown. So R&R was blessed with Earlham again to come alongside and help us financially secure that building. And it's not going to be a restoration in our traditional sense, but it will be. We're going to vet the people who move into it, make sure that it fits with the plan for downtown.
Okay.
We may even have, it comes with one of the biggest parking lots in our downtown, so that's really important. We couldn't lose that parking lot, because then where do people park to shop at all of our local stores?
Right.
And so that building, it's so cool on inside. It's got the original marble. The vaults are in there. I mean, I could just see myself having a beautiful dinner with somebody in that building, or a great glass of wine after work. It's just going to be a fun place for people to go.
Oh, well, neat. Well, that's exciting. More to come, I guess, on that.
Oh, yes,
and it is exciting that won't just sit dormant. So are the plans kind of in the pipeline, or it's all very new and just kind of we'll wait to see what kind of activity starts to unfold in the maybe new year? Or
yeah, so in the next few months you'll start to see a lot of movement on these projects. We are working with other downtown developers and investors and current property owners to figure out what they are doing with their properties. Never in downtown history has there been this much momentum. People are excited to think about the future of downtown. We have money to help with downtown development. Not only did Earlham receive that large grant, but they've also found cost share, which in total is over $100 million in investment in downtown over the next 5 years. So there's a lot happening, and making sure that we're very strategic about what happens. We don't want to open 5 breweries right next to each other. That's not going to be what happened. That's not going to be good for our downtown. So understanding the needs and the wants of our community, and thinking outside of our typical community member. How can we attract other people to come to Richmond?
Right.
I'm sure you and others have traveled out of town to check out a new restaurant, or have gone out of town to do an experience somewhere. Can we create those experiences in downtown and bring people from other communities to us?
Right.
And are the buildings safe? Are they beautiful? Are they fun? And are they a place that people, can I walk my dogs downtown? Is that something that, I feel comfortable doing, and giving experiences to get people downtown?
Well, it's all very exciting. So tell us a little bit about how you guys function. So there's you. Obviously we've heard about the founding fathers. We did hear about a board. So how do you guys, what's your guiding there? I mean, what's your structure, I guess? Is there any other employee besides you, or?
Yeah, I am the full-time solo staff member, which is a fun ride. As any nonprofit executive director will tell you, I wear many different hats.
Yes.
And if we go back and look at an interview we did 2 years ago, I had no idea what I was doing. No, I was faking it till I made it. Sometimes I still am. But I'm blessed with incredible contractors. I have some of the greatest guys working for us. We hire them just like you would hire a contractor to work on your home. I don't think they had to spend a lot of time educating me in the role. They would be like, oh, we need to tuck point that. And I would stand behind them and write in my phone, look up tuck pointing after the meeting. And so I've had to learn along, they've had to teach me a lot. But my board of directors, our board of trustees, they are fantastic. All of them are equally invested in our community in their own ways. But they really are visionaries for what an organization should look like.
Yeah.
And they empower me, our contractors, they empower our volunteers to really kind of grab life by the horns and just go full throttle into whatever project we're in. We have an incredible strategic plan that shows us the next 5 years, and we review that strategic plan continuously. I mean, it's not a document that we put in a binder and put on a shelf. Every meeting, we're constantly looking. Are we matching our goals? Are we on point where we want to be? And we have donors and investors who have seen that strategic plan, believe in that strategic plan, and have stepped up with us too. So we are privately funded. Yes, we have an incredible grant opportunity that doesn't cover, construction is expensive.
Right.
And so we've had to raise money and be creative in that outlet. But again, I rely heavily on my board and for that support.
Excuse me, guys, I've got a tickle. I can't seem to shake it. If people wanted to get involved with volunteering.
Yeah.
Because if you want to roll your sleeves up, if construction's your bag, you want to learn about it so you can start doing stuff around your own home.
Yeah.
Is that possible for folks? How does that work?
Absolutely. So there's a couple different avenues for volunteers. A lot of times we start volunteers in residential units because it's much less intimidating than being in a building that's 4 stories tall with lots of different projects going on. I always recommend signing up for any of our volunteer days. We usually do them on Saturday mornings, but we have occasional Wednesday night opportunities. So that's kind of our individual opportunity. And you don't have to have any skill set. We'll teach you. We'll come, and if we haven't learned, we'll learn with you. We'll watch some YouTube videos and figure it out, or we'll call a professional in to teach us. If your company, now this is kind of a fun new opportunity. Let's say your company is looking for some team building opportunities.
Okay.
We have a leadership kind of training class that you can take with R&R where we do some leadership training in one of the homes. And then you get to spend kind of a couple of hours after that doing some actual teamwork by painting and scraping and doing all kind of the fun stuff. And it's fun to get out of the office for a day and have a different experience. We always hear about groups, they're going to the animal shelters or they're going to the food, and this is just a different opportunity, similar situation. And you get to learn a little bit about the work that we're doing. It's not a traditional nonprofit. You don't hear about these kind of groups often. So it creates some community buy-in too for your employees. And we can set those up whenever you're interested, and we kind of tailor to whatever the house needs in that moment. We had Neighborhood Health Center came in recently, and we were about 3 days out from starting painting, so they actually taped all the edges off so that we could, and let me tell you, that saved a lot of time for our painters and a lot of money for our organization as well.
I mean, if you have ever painted,
we will take you immediately.
The prep work is what takes the most time, and that prep work is all that taping.
All that taping.
I can imagine that saved you guys a lot of time and money.
Hours.
I mean, I've sat there and done that, in preparation, and it's just like, once we get all this done, once you start rolling, it's a whole lot faster and easier. And
we put people in partners, and we had them race each other to see who could get the rooms, and they got it done really quickly, and they had fun, and they're giggling along the way, and we never want this to be like, oh, I'm getting up on Saturday morning to go clean someone else's home. We want you to come alongside of us. We work closely with the Historic Preservation Commission, the HPC for the city of Richmond. I actually serve on that commission.
Okay.
But they have just finished up a fantastic series of training for historic homeowners where they taught you how to glaze windows, and they brought in professionals and actually had people glaze windows. Moving into 2025 later in the year, we're actually going to take that group that went through those classes and we're going to give them hands-on experiences in our homes. And anybody will be able to join those. It'll be free for anybody, but you'll be able to learn the skill and then go home and do the same skill. We'll have people right alongside you teaching you how to do it. We work closely with contractors like Scott Bartle, who love these old homes and care for them and want the work to be done correctly. And the more people we have doing that work, the easier our job is in the long run.
What's the biggest challenge that you face?
Oh, every day you dig into a wall. I mean, there are days where my contractor calls me at 6:30 in the morning and I know it's going to be a long day. Contractors don't like to call property owners early in the morning. Obviously, anytime you're dealing with an old home, you don't know what you're going to get into. And there are days where you tear down a wall and you find out that there's dry rot or a pipe has burst in the cold weather. I mean, nothing, if you're a homeowner, you know cold weather does damage. Indiana is full of the elements, and we go through 4 seasons in one day. And there are days where I see the 4 seasons taking advantage of these old homes. And so securing them quickly, getting utilities to them quickly. A lot of times we will assume that something is really great, and then as we use it, at the Doolin house, water lines were fine until we turned them back on and they were running and they started being used for the first time in 15 years. You start to see them decay quicker. And so starting to replace those things.
Interesting.
So again, we plan for the worst, hope for the best, knowing that at any given moment, something could happen. And you just kind of live in this constant, we had a storm a few weeks ago and I was awake the whole night going, is the building okay? Are we good? And the next morning, as soon as electricity was back on, I was out the door checking on all the buildings because you just have to be prepared for whatever could happen.
Right. 30 seconds, what brings you the most joy about what you do?
You can see the work.
There you go.
Right? Like I drive down this main street and I go, that house and that house, oh, and that building, those are ours. And they're not torn down.
Yeah.
If you look at the Hill House on 23rd Street, if you look at the Google Street View from 5 years ago, you couldn't even tell there was a home there. Yeah. And we just sold that home for a significant amount of money. And to see the difference between the two pictures is just incredible. Well, something I'm proud of.
That's wonderful. And we're excited about all that's happening. We look forward to more in 25. And thank you for coming and sharing all of this, and also for all the work that you're putting into the community, because you're making it more beautiful and just bringing a lot of life and love to it. So thank you so much for what you do. Well, that'll take us to the end of today's episode. Thank you so much for joining us. Stay well, and we'll see you next time on The Third Sector.